Spirit. Please be seated. There's a party happening. The planning has been thoughtfully cared for. Margaret, you know what that's like, right? Mm-hmm. The invitations have been appropriately distributed, the music intentionally decided upon, the menu tastefully coordinated, pun intended. No expense has been spared. All the T's are crossed and those I's dotted. And yet the unthinkable happens. The wine has already run dry. Did the wedding planner order the wrong number? Did the uninvited show up throwing off the head count? Were people drinking more than anticipated? I mean, we should have known when that uncle was invited and getting together with his friends, we needed some extra. The reason for the shortfall is going to have to be investigated, but later. For now, the concern is doing whatever needs to be done to keep this party going. See, the community, the village is expecting a week-long celebration. Margaret, are you glad it was only a day? And if the couple does not meet this expectation, their families will be shamed for years to come. No one wants that reputation. Mary, an attendee, overhears a few of the servants whispering their concerns that the final drops from that final jug of wine have been poured out. Mary is now concerned too. Not only has she been looking forward to this excuse to let her hair down, see, there's been too much craziness in the world and she's been in need of a break just to celebrate life and love for a moment. But more importantly, Mary is concerned for social status of these two families, and especially for this young couple as they start off. They don't need to be ostracized before they even get a chance to begin. Mary isn't sure what should be done, but she knows if anyone can fix it, it's her son. Now, she's witnessed him manage some impossible situations before in quiet and unassuming ways. She also recalls what she has known since his first days, that he was destined for great things. And if she's perfectly honest, she's been getting a little antsy lately, ready for him to move out of the basement, so to speak. That's figurative, of course. We know he's living up in a loft. She's determined to push him forward, to push him out of the nest. Jesus hears his mom's anxiety and tries to quiet her down, to brush her off. He does not want to make a scene. He wants to stay under the radar a little bit longer if possible, but he also cannot not intervene. He looks around and sees those purification jugs, water used for ritual cleansing. And maybe he thinks, sure, cleansing is an important practice, but joyfully celebrating the coming together of a community and the creation of a new family, all of this abundant life is just as important as the purification rites. All of a sudden, the fully God portion of this incarnate being, Jesus, the Word that created the world and the water within it, shows power over creation once more and turns water into wine with such ease. No one can tell you if there was a waving of a hand or a snapping of a finger or some words spoken that led to this transformation. It just happened. The first to notice the difference were the servants. They're confused, dumbfounded. They were first confused because they were unsure why this guy was asking for water to be drawn from these purification jugs to begin with. See, he had already done his But when they lifted the ladle out from within the depths, they were shocked to see the liquid contents be a deep red, and that sweet aroma of a nice, full-body, well-aged vintage hit their noses. One of the servants quietly calls for another one, takes a sip from the ladle, only to be transfixed, for his tongue has never tasted something so profoundly complex and delicious. As if this wasn't enough, this young man who asked the servants for the contents to be drawn from that jug indicate again to do the same to the other 5 jugs standing there. They are now all filled to the brim with the best wine. The party is saved. There is the best imaginable wine overflowing for days to come. The sign of the water being turned into wine at the wedding feast of Cana is only found in John's Gospel. So much of John's Gospel seems to be filled with layers upon layers upon layers of meaning, often trying to disguise one thing with another in many ways. Here at the start of Jesus' ministry, we hear that God's glory is revealed. But unlike how the revelation is played out in the other 3 Gospels, there's no mountaintop moment, no company of Moses and Elijah and dazzling clothing, no divine voices from the clouds. There's no transfiguration in the Gospel of John. Instead, God's glory is revealed. God's grace is understood through this simple act of turning some water into wine, so that life and union could be celebrated. The wedding feast at Cana is one of 3 traditional Epiphany stories, along with the story of the Magi that we heard last week and the baptism that we're unfortunately skipping over this year. Epiphany being this time where we recognize and celebrate how Jesus' divinity is being revealed. So what's being revealed here for us today? Here's a list for you. I invite you to listen. If something that I offer here grabs your attention, to take note of it, to dwell on it throughout the week, to think about it more deeply. First, God's glory is joy and celebration. These signs aren't just for life and death circumstances. It's also for this sense of joy and life and community and celebration. God's glory is also experiential. You can smell it, swirl it, sip it. You can taste and see that the Lord is good. God's glory can easily go unnoticed, though. How few knew what happened at that wedding party. Maybe it reminds us that we are first off to try and stay aware of where God is being revealed every day. But also to have faith knowing that God's glory is shining whether we can see it or not. God's glory also sometimes requires a bit of a swift kick. Even Jesus needed encouragement here. Thanks, Mom. Another one. God's glory is often out of the box. The use of those purification jugs, a resource that's already available, but needed some creative thought and repurposing. But that being out of the box also means that sometimes we have to do things, even though you'll get responses of, "You've never done it that way before." But in the end, the best is discovered in those out-of-the-box moments. And lastly, God's glory is revealed that God's grace is abundant. abundant. This echoes the images we have throughout all of the Gospels of the mass feedings, where a couple of loaves and a little bit of fish feed the multitudes with baskets overflowing for leftovers. I hope you brought your Tupperware. See, there's enough wine to keep this party going for a long, long time. Sure, Jesus could have made enough wine for one more round so that the groom could offer a final toast and respectfully send everyone on their way. But instead, 6 large jugs of wine become available. Now, rumor is if you go to Cana today, you can still purchase some of that wine in those jugs. Those 6 jugs, apparently, someone's done the math, and I'm going to trust them with it, that it equates to about 800 to 1,000 bottles of wine. That's a lot of wine. Go big or go home, Jesus says. The first sign in John's Gospel shows us that God's grace and love is abundant. There's always more than enough. This passage then asks us to consider, where have we witnessed God's abundance in our own lives? And where are we wanting God to act abundantly in our lives today? But if we ask that second question, I think it's important to follow up with, do we have the faith to lean into that hope that God can fulfill our hopes abundantly? See, individually and communally, we have to make choices every day. We can either choose to react to our fears and our concerns that there just isn't enough. And I have to be honest, it's easy to react that way sometimes. Or we can respond by trusting in God's abundance. What is at the root of our choices? If we want to respond with that abundant attitude, it requires hope. Hope then allows us to see things differently, to not fixate on the worst, but keep our eyes on God's best. Hope gives us energy to be creative, to see what's right in front of us, and see how we can repurpose it, just like God repurposed that water. See, fear blinds us, but hope unbinds us. God blesses with abundance, and our hope helps us to get out of the way so that abundance can flow freely. This passage reminds us that there is so much more going on. That while there is this anxiety, while there are many things that can cause us to worry or fret or complain, we can acknowledge these feelings, but not let ourselves to fixate on them. Certainly not give them more power by letting them control how we make our decisions. Instead, we are invited to be people of hope, leaning heavily into the promise that God's abundant love and grace and provisions are always there. Do we dare lean into the promises of God's abundance? Do we dare make our decisions based on this abundance? Let us be people of hope. We are Iona